Investment banking has been getting a lot of heat over the past few years, especially since the 2008 financial crisis, but I still believe that it can be such a beneficial career for a lot of people. It's something that can really change your life for the better, and so today I'm going to give you guys the 5 reasons you might want to join an investment bank. What's up everyone, my name is Ben, I'm a former JP Morgan investment banking analyst, and welcome to Rareliquid, a channel where I talk about tech investing and career advice. Now just as a heads up, one thing I won't be talking about in this video is compensation, because I feel like that's a pretty obvious draw for banking, but if you do want to learn more about how much you make in investment banking, feel free to check out this video where I talk about how much bankers make, or this one where I talk about how I spent my salary. Now, before I begin, I do want to add the caveat that I understand that banking is not for everyone. The lifestyle is pretty rough, and there are people out there who don't like financial statements, and I don't really understand those kind of people, but people are just, different. I'm just kidding, I totally get it. Numbers are not for everyone, financial statements can be boring, but anyway, let's talk about the 5 reasons you might be interested in investment banking. Let's first start off with reason number 1, which is that you're genuinely interested in finance. Now, just to share with you guys my own personal story, when I was in college, for the first few years, I thought I was going to become a management consultant, and I thought that was what I was interested in. But then I started investing into the stock market, was super curious about how a stock price could represent an entire company, didn't know at all what I was doing, started building my own crude financial models and reading books about how to invest correctly and all that stuff. And as I did more and more digging, I just realized that investment banking was the best way to learn about finance. As a result, in my senior year of college, I decided to recruit for investment banking. And as I was preparing for interviews, diving deep into the technical questions about accounting, DCFs, all that stuff, I actually realized I almost kind of enjoyed what I was learning. And I know that sounds super nerdy, but I felt like for me that was a really great sign that said, you might actually really be interested in this field, because all the recruiting preparation that you do is pretty much what you're going to come across on the job. And in comparison, I had a lot of friends who found the material super dry. It felt like they were just running through mud as they were preparing for interviews, and those people or those friends that I had didn't really end up going for banking because it just wasn't a good fit for them. I think a lot of people focus too much on the compensation and prestige of investment banking, when I think what's really the most important thing, and the reason why this is reason number 1, is that if you have a genuine interest in finance, then I think it's a great reason to really consider investment banking. If you don't have that passion for numbers and analyzing companies from a financial perspective, honestly, I would just say that banking is probably not for you. Alright, next up is reason number 2, which is to build a strong technical skill set. The most important skill that you'll learn as an investment banker is financial modeling, and it's a super valuable skill. Every other business role pretty much will teach you how to build presentations, organize meetings, and coordinate a lot of projects and things like that. But investment banking is really the only field that really trains you in terms of financial modeling. Now, one thing I do want to let you guys know is you do not have to be some kind of math wizard to be good at financial modeling. Excel does all of the calculations for you. So it's really a matter of, do you like looking into financial statements, understanding how a company is performing from a financial perspective? If those things are innately interesting to you, then building that technical skill set will be something that you really value yourself as just a business skill. I remember one time I actually modeled for 28 or 29, I forget how much, but 29 straight hours on a financial model, and I actually found the exercise so interesting that I didn't even really mind how hard that I was working. But of course, the next day when I was sent home at like 1 p.m, I just crashed and slept for the entire day. But basically what I'm trying to say is that it's a very interesting and valuable skill. A lot of people also compare investment banking to management consulting, and I did a consulting internship my junior summer at Deloitte, and I found that the entire work was pretty data driven, but it was a lot more qualitative, which is something like, instead of looking at a bunch of financial figures in a consulting job, you might be doing a lot of survey responses that you're collecting and then analyzing that data from a survey, and of course that's just one small example. Other management consultants probably could speak better as to how much they really dig into financials and things like that. I know that consultants do, but in terms of doing valuation analyses and really creating in-depth financial models, I don't think you're going to really find that in consulting or pretty much any other job. By the way, if you do want to learn a little bit more about the types of models that you would build, check out these 2 videos right here. The third reason to go into investment banking are the exit opportunities. When it comes to the overall business field, I think it's pretty undeniable that investment banking gives you the best jumpstart to your career and the overall best exit opportunities. When you go through an analyst program or an associate program at an investment bank, you kind of have a stamp on your resume that really just says, okay, this person has a strong work ethic, they can work well under pressure, they're comfortable with numbers, can build presentations. That's pretty much so many great qualities that you would want as an employer. Private equity firms, hedge funds, venture capitalists, these kind of buy-side roles are pretty much only available for investment banking analysts, and it doesn't even matter if you worked at McKinsey, Bain, or BCG. Although these kinds of buy-side firms do hire a few consultants, I'd say 90% or more of their spots are filled by investment bankers. As an investment banking analyst, you constantly get emails from headhunters who are trying to fill these roles at buy-side firms. And I kid you not, to this day, I still get emails, even though it's been 3 years since I left banking, from some headhunters. I'm still on the email list or something. I don't know, but they're still emailing me to this day. Not as frequently, but it's still crazy that I get those emails. In addition to these buy-side roles, you'll pretty much be competitive for almost any industry job that you apply for. So for example, some of my friends became product managers at tech firms, which is one of the hardest jobs to get. Others joined corporate development teams, and others joined as business strategy analysts at industry firms. And so pretty much the world is your oyster because every single company really wants to hire former investment bankers. Next up, reason number 4 is to learn more about an industry or product. This reason kind of flies under the radar because most people who aren't recruiting for banking don't really understand how investment banks are organized. It's pretty simple. Most investment banks, or at least the bulge bracket banks, are organized into different groups, which are either industry coverage groups or product groups. Coverage groups cover one industry, and so for example, I worked in the healthcare coverage team, and so all of the clients that we worked with were only healthcare clients, some of which you might know like Moderna and Pfizer. There are other groups like tech, consumer, financial institutions, and a few more. And so basically, let's say you were working in the tech group, you might be working with the top firms like Facebook, Amazon, Google, etc., and you'd be looking into industry trends, also interfacing with a lot of the top level management, in some cases maybe even the CEO, CFO of these companies. And so you'll be learning a ton about your specific industry. So if that's something you want to do because you know for certain that you want to be in consumer your whole life, or tech, or healthcare, or you just want to at least experiment and see if that industry is for you, then investment banking is a really great way to learn more about a particular industry. On the other hand, product groups are groups that only focus on one type of transaction but can work with multiple industries. So for example, some of the popular ones are M&A, which stands for mergers and acquisitions. There's also equity capital markets, which work on things like IPOs. And then there's leverage finance, which focuses on debt transactions. So for example, in the San Francisco office at JP Morgan where I worked, the M&A team worked on both tech deals and also healthcare ones, while I focused on only healthcare but worked on equity capital market deals and also M&A deals. By the way, if any of the terms that I used are confusing or you've just come across them, then feel free to ask me some questions in the comments down below. I try to respond to every single question that I can. Alright, so last but not least, reason number 5 is my personal favorite, and it's that banking is one of the fastest ways to grow personally and professionally. As you probably know, investment bankers work really hard, around 80 to 100 hours a week. And since the average person works around 40 hours a week, if you work 2 years in banking, you've pretty much worked the equivalent of 4 years for the average person. Almost on a week-by-week basis, you're going to be pushed to your limits mentally, emotionally, sometimes even physically. And it's not always going to be fun, but I would say that you really get to see what you're made of. That's why in my quote in the New York Times, I basically said that banking is like boot camp, where it really sucks when you go through it, but when you come out of it, you reap the benefits of all your hard work. So as kind of a personal lesson that I drew and took away from banking, now because I've worked and have become so accustomed in my first job out of college working 80 to 100 hours a week, now any single work week where I work something like 40 hours, it really feels like a breeze. And so I've been anchored with that first initial experience, and I can't necessarily say that it's only a good thing, but it has really helped me build a lot of work stamina in a sense. And so nowadays, if I'm working like 60 hours a week on rareliquid and things like that, that seems kind of like a normal week. Whereas if I think I started with a 40-hour type of or 40-hour week type of job and then moved to something like 60 hours, I think it would be a lot harder. So really developing your work ethic in a sense, even though you probably already had it if you get into banking, I think it just gets pushed to your limits and gets even better. Now on the professional side, what I think is really unique about investment banking is something that my managing director once told me, which I'll probably never forget because I was like, wow, that's so true. And it's basically that whenever a client comes to an investment bank, it's usually during that client's or one of that client's most important moments in their entire histories. So whenever a company wants to buy another company, when it wants to sell itself, when it wants to go public in an initial public offering, all of these are huge milestones for any company. Now, because these transactions are so important, what it means is that the C-suite level executives are almost always going to be involved. And so whenever I was working on any kind of deal, usually there was a point person who's kind of at the VP level that I would interact with most. But eventually when it came down to making the real final big decisions, we usually would have to go on calls with the CEOs, CFOs. And it's not like as an analyst, I would talk to these people on the phone calls. A lot of times I'd just be, on mute, quietly listening to what's going on. But still, as a fresh grad out of undergrad, it's, you really can't get this kind of exposure in almost any single job except maybe management consulting, where you get to have all this exposure to really top level management people, and you're able to just hear how they think about industries, strategies, negotiating, like all that kind of stuff. And you really can't get that in anywhere else besides banking. Also, it's important to note that investment banking deal teams are very lean. Usually I was the only analyst in my group working on any kind of transaction. So what this also means is that you're giving a ton of responsibility because you're really the one creating the financial model, building the presentations for huge billion-dollar deals if you're working at a bulge bracket or elite boutique bank. And so you're just getting a ton of responsibility really right out of college, and it's something that couldn't be a lot of pressure, but you have your team really backing you and helping you throughout the entire process, and it's just a really great way to learn right out of college. By the way, if you want to learn more about what you do during an actual deal, check out this video right here where I worked on a $6 billion deal, or you can check out this video which talks about a crazy week versus an easy week in investment banking. Alright guys, that wraps up the video. If you guys want me to cover any other topics about investment banking, then please let me know down in the comments below, or let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to answer every single one. Alright, so that concludes the video. Thanks so much as always for watching. Hope to catch you in the next one. Thanks so much and peace out.